This quick tip video will highlight how to use blind and buried vias in Paths Professional. To start the process, we go to the Setup menu and choose Setup Parameters. We then click on the Via Definition tab, and we will always have a through via there. You can re-specify the pad stack that's being used. So the way Paths Professional functions is you define in your library all the different via types that you're going to be using or allowed to be used in your design, and then you can pick them from this pad stack list. So to add a new via, we simply click on the blue star icon there. It adds a new column, and then you simply drag from what layer you want the via to start and end. So in this case, we're going to create two blind vias and a buried. So we're going to do a 1, 2, set the proper pad stack type, add again, do a 9 to 10, set the proper via, and then do a core via. Now to assist ourselves during the routing process, each one of the pad stacks for each one of those via types, we can set the allowed vias that we're allowed to use if we try to change them in the design. So for each one of these, I'm going to go through real quick and set the allowed via to just that one type. So I'm not allowed to use a different type of via for the all the way through or the blind and burieds. Of course, that's maybe not be realistic because obviously the through via, you probably want a bigger one maybe for your power and grounds, and maybe a smaller one for your signals, which is very doable. And then before we leave this dialog box, in this case here, I'm going to do a stacked via in the design. I'm going to put the 1, 2 on top of the 2 to 9. So in order to make that happen in our via matrix here, after we've defined our vias, I can set which via can be concentric with another via. And you can see down here at the bottom, you get help as to what all the options are for how one via can relate to another via. All right, now that we have our via types defined, we can go back into CES and we can start setting up some of our design rules to determine which via types we're going to be allowed to use. So here we'll expand out the master scheme, click on default, and then in the via column, I can click on the triple button, pull up a list of all the different layer pairs I've defined with my vias. I can turn off a particular via that I don't want to be used when I move from one layer of the board to another. So if I want to ensure that all the default nets in the design only use a 3-hole via, we will set each via type to none, except for the one we want to use. So for this design, we want to put via in pad. So once we're done with our rules, we will define how vias can be placed in component pads. To do this, we will click on Editor Control and go to Pad Entry. And then I can choose individual pad types, or in this case, I'm just going to choose all rectangular and round pads. And I'm going to choose the option for Allow Via under Pad. Now, since we're doing blind and buried vias, I can also set the via types that we're allowed to use within that area or within that pad type. And you can see there's some other options here we can set as well. So very quickly, I can go in and set the couple pad types that I'm worried about here. So on the bottom, we have some decoupling capacitors, and on the top, obviously our pads are round for the BGA. So that's why I'm only currently setting those pad types. If I wanted, I could do every other pad type as well that's available to me. All right, before we start doing any routing or fan out, I want to draw in my rule area that I just created in CES. So to do this, we go to the draw menu, we click on rule area, we set our draw function to a square in this case. So I can click on one point, draw a box down across the BGA, and terminate it. A properties window will pop up. All I have to do is set the name to the scheme that's being used, and then I can choose if that rule area is going to be used on all layers or one individual layer. If you want it on several different layers but not all, you can take that one shape, copy and paste it, and then change the respective layer that that rule is going to apply to. All right, before we start routing, I need to fan out this BGA. So I'm going to select all the pins, do right click, apply fan outs, and you'll see every single pin in the design will get the appropriate fan out based on how my rules were set. So you'll see the grounds and powers are using a 1, 2 via, so that a lot of my ground vias here don't have to go all the way through the board. That will give me more routing channels if I need to go across the BGA. And all my DDR stuff is only going to have the 1, 2 vias as well. Obviously, our DDR signals can't just go from layer 1 to 2. They're going to go from layers 1 to 3 and then to 4 as well. Earlier, we set it up in the via definitions that we can have stacked vias. So then I can go ahead and add in our 2 to 9 via and stack it on top of the 1 to 2 via. Now, lastly, we'll do a quick view of the board in 3D. We'll just click on the 3D tab if it's running. If not, just go to Windows and add 3D view. Once in 3D, we can zoom into the area we want. Then we can use the rotation cube down on the bottom left corner to rotate around, zoom in and out. To look at the area we've routed, look at our blind and buried vias and any other routing of interest.